Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Hudda tonight. We're continuing to provide news and information from across the Muslim Ummah. It's my honor and privilege to be here, our honor and privilege to be here for another live episode. We tonight, on this 26th day of Dhul Hijjah 1437, are continuing to look at Syria. This is a subject of great interest to us. If you were with us yesterday, we dedicated the entire program yesterday to Syria. We're also going to be doing the same thing today. Again, it's all about Syria in tonight's program. Inshallah, we're scheduled to do this for a third day tomorrow. This is a subject of great interest to the hierarchy in the Hudda TV organization. The executives have asked us to dedicate this time because they're very deeply concerned about the status of the brothers and sisters who are suffering in Syria. We tonight in our new segment are looking at a number of aspects of this intensification, this military coalition between Syrian regime forces, the various militia, including Iranian ground troops, forces from Iraq that are supporting Assad's regime, Russia's Air Force. This combined coalition, they're pushing to reclaim the entire city of Aleppo. It's a major operation. We're looking at this. We're looking at going back to revisit this attack on a UN aid convoy that was destroyed in Aleppo last week on Monday. We're also looking at a diplomatic action, a meeting being held between Iranian officials and Turkey officials in the Turkish capital of Ankara. We start tonight with a closer look at this ground offensive that the Syrian forces and all of the supporting allies have been launching in concert with the intensified air raids in Aleppo. So this takes us to look specifically at the ground forces, and this comes following several days of intensified and aerial bombardment in the Syrian city of Aleppo. The Syrian government on Tuesday, they further escalated this campaign to reclaim this divided city by using ground forces. Tuesday's offensive is being described in the international press as the biggest ground assault against opposition forces in Aleppo since the civil war in Syria started more than 5 years ago. Yesterday's offensive, it saw pro-regime forces, including regime forces for Syria, militia groups loyal to Assad from Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, making multiple assaults with armored vehicles and tanks from various access points into the city. That's according to a commander for the Iraqi Shiite militia that's again fighting in support of Assad. Both the Syrian military and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, this is a group that monitors a war on the ground inside Syria, they confirmed that the government forces did achieve some measure of success in Aleppo. However, the opposition have refuted these reports. The escalation indicates a strategic shift. Analysts are saying this is also a very significant shift in Assad's strategy towards reclaiming Aleppo. Previously, their focus had been on aerial assaults with the aim of achieving a surrender by the opposition forces. But now we have a different approach with ground forces, including armored vehicles, attacking from multiple access points being supported by Russian Air Force. If this strategy is successful, attacking in this way, it would translate into perhaps the greatest victory for Assad's forces since this war started. The United States government, in terms of the international response to this intensification, the U.S. government is interpreting this major campaign as a sign that both Russia and Syria are giving up on the international peace process that for several months has failed In fact, many of the allies of Assad have been now vocalizing with the international press that diplomatic efforts are not the solution, that military victory is the best option. For example, we go to Saeed Hussein Nasrallah. He is a leader of Hezbollah based in Lebanon. He echoed this U.S. perspective, saying, quote, that there are no prospects for political solutions, Nasrallah said. He says that the final word is for the battlefield, end quote. Also, another person, allied to Bashar al-Assad, Ali Shamkhani, he is Iran's National Security Council. He said on Tuesday that the fate of Aleppo would be determined only through a forceful confrontation, end quote. So we have this coalition in support of Assad. They're very serious. They're rallying. They have aligned themselves around this strategy of using military force, casting aside the failed diplomatic efforts. And so there's lots to look forward to as they continue to escalate. This is a second week now that we've seen this. We would like to continue looking now at some of the attacks that occurred today. This has to do with two hospitals in Aleppo that have been destroyed by the air campaign. Now this, of course, is a part of the larger campaign to reclaim Aleppo. Two hospitals in the eastern part of Aleppo were hit by warplanes just earlier this morning, very early this morning at about 4 a.m. They struck these hospitals. Medical staff at one of the hospitals told reporters that two hospital staff were actually killed in the bombing raids in the hospitals, and that they have now been reduced because of severe damage. They have been rendered unusable. Now, one of the spokespersons, medical staff person, Mohammed Abu Rajab, he's a radiologist that works at Aleppo's M10 hospital. He told reporters, quote, that warplanes flew over us and directly started dropping its missiles on the hospital at around 4 a.m. He said that the rubble fell on top of the patients who were being treated in intensive care. He also said that two patients died because the airstrikes damaged the equipment that was needed to sustain their lives. We also heard from Adham Solhul. He is working with an organization called the Syrian American Medical Society. He said that he believes that these facilities are being deliberately targeted. There are only 30 doctors now, according to our best estimates and our best reports. There are only 30 doctors remaining in eastern Aleppo. One of them spoke with the press, and he actually talked very matter-of-factly about his anticipated death because of this campaign. He's an anesthesiologist, Dr. Anwar Shahid. He said, quote, people here now consider themselves dead and are just counting the days. He says, I am lucky if I survive until tonight, but I am sure that I will die. If not today, then tomorrow for sure, end quote. Hospital staff, they described this morning's attack as a systematic campaign of destruction against doctors and medical facilities in Aleppo. The attack, it reduces the number of functioning hospitals down to 6. And 3 of the remaining 6 hospitals in Aleppo, only 3 of them have the equipment necessary to handle medical emergencies. Now, if you recall, this strategy of targeting medical facilities and medical staff is the same strategy we saw 2 years ago in the Gaza Strip with the Israeli forces targeting even a UN health facility. And so it's a part of squeezing the life, creating a condition to force people to surrender, to leave, and reclaim the territory. So this is highly controversial. The international community, especially Britain and the United States, are describing this as barbaric, as an example of war crimes, etc. We would like, inshallah, to go to our next story. It takes us to an attack on a United Nations aid convoy that was in Aleppo. It happened last week on Monday, September 19th. And it was a major shipment of humanitarian aid to those who are holed up, who are remaining in Aleppo. And in the wake of this, immediately after it, both the Russian and the Syrian governments asserted that they did not play a role in the strike against this UN aid convoy. To validate its case, a spokesperson for Russia's defense ministry said, quote, that the air forces of Russia and Syria did not conduct any airstrikes against UN aid convoy in the southwestern outskirts of Aleppo, end quote. Also, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, is demanding a thorough investigation into the attack on the aid convoy. In addition, in terms of the impact, the damage that was done by this attack, in addition to nearly 20 trucks that were destroyed, that was 20 trucks that were carrying material, but a total of more than 30 vehicles that were a part of this convoy. In addition to these being destroyed, there were at least 20 people who were killed. These include personnel from the International Federation for the Red Cross and the Red Crescent societies. Now, in addition to this call for an investigation by Sergei Lavrov, by the defense minister saying that Russia and Syria didn't participate and were not conducting operations at the time and place of the attack, they also are saying that they know, they have evidence indicating that an armed U.S. drone was in the vicinity at the time of the airstrike. In other words, they're indirectly blaming the United States for destroying the UN aid convoy. Now, we can only speculate. What they're saying is that they have people, spotters, perhaps on the ground, that are part of the militia that are fighting on behalf of Assad, or that there's some kind of electronic signature that's transmitted from these unmanned aerial vehicles. In any case, they're making a very tall accusation against the U.S. government that they're attacking an aid convoy destined for Aleppo to relieve the suffering of the people there. So we look forward to seeing what will happen. They're calling for Russia is calling for a thorough, independent investigation. We look forward to see what will happen with this, inshallah. We turn to our next aspect of Syria. Looks at the arena of diplomacy, not between Russia and the United States, but between Iran and Turkey. Turkey is also heavily involved in Syria. They have a major border security operation that's called Operation Euphrates Shield. They are now at least 50 kilometers, or just about 50 kilometers inside Syrian territory. That is Turkish ground forces. In any case, we have the Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Mohammad Javad Zarif. Earlier today, he landed in Ankara, the Turkish capital, to meet with Turkish officials. This is fairly recent. About 6 weeks ago, he also had a similar meeting over the subject of Syria. They actually have opposing sides on the subject. Nevertheless, Mr. Zarif, he met with Turkey's foreign minister, Mevlut Cavusoglu. This was considered by the press. It was not an announced visit. It was unscheduled. So we can only speculate that this means that there's something of great urgency, that they want to meet face to face to discuss about Syria. Iran and Turkey, again, as we've said, they stand on opposite sides, at least in public. That's the positions that they're taking, where Tehran is one of the few allies, obviously, a very strong ally to Bashar al-Assad. And so we would like and very interested to see what will come out of this meeting. There aren't many details. Again, this was an unscheduled visit, so we don't have a lot in terms of content. He is also, Mr. Zarif is also going to be meeting with the Turkish Prime Minister, Binali Yildirim. That's expected also for today, so we'll be looking tomorrow, inshallah, to look at the outcome of this meeting between Iran and Turkey over Syria. We next go to another humanitarian side to the story and the situation in Syria in general, but in Aleppo in particular. This has to do with the United Nations attempting to not only get humanitarian aid inside Aleppo and other parts of Syria that need this relief, but also they're recalling for an opening of safe evacuation routes for medical emergencies. This is especially important because the hospitals are under attack. As of today, at least 2 of the 6 remaining hospitals have been heavily damaged, if not completely destroyed. And this intensification is creating more casualties, more fatalities. And so the numbers obviously are going to be increasing. And as we said earlier, even medical doctors are saying they're expecting to die at any minute. And so the World Health Organization on Tuesday is calling for, urging the international community and all actors in Syria to allow sick and wounded people from eastern Aleppo to be granted safe passage to receive medical treatment in other parts outside of Aleppo. So we haven't had an official response yet from Syria, from Russia, from all the parties, but it's very important to coordinate this type of effort, because imagine if people are trying to be evacuated for medical emergencies and then end up losing their lives because there wasn't a coordination of their movements. So very important. We look forward to another thing for us to look forward to for tomorrow. We have one more item that we're going to be looking at in our news segment tonight. It takes us to this Turkish ground and air operation called Operation Euphrates Shield that has brought Turkish ground troops inside Syrian territory. Initially, the initial point in this Turkish ground force, this was a border security operation. They said it was against Daesh. They wanted to clear the presence of Daesh on the Syrian side of the border to protect its own national boundaries. And the initial border town on the Syrian side where they landed was this Syrian city of Jarabulus. Now, after reclaiming and clearing Daesh's presence from Jarabulus, thousands of Syrian nationals are returning to Jarabulus from Turkey because, in other words, because of the success of the Turkish operation. The official tally in terms of the toll, the number of Syrians who are returning from Turkey back to the Syrian side of the border is put at 3,500 people. Many of them had actually even left prior to the Turkish operation because of the presence of Daesh. Now they have been returned, and we heard from the head of an organization there, a migration office, saying, quote, that our office carries out the registrations of these people who are moving and temporarily immigrating to the Turkish side for safety and security. And now they're going to be going back, at least 3,000, nearly 3,500 of them. So this is something. This is a bit of light that we can look at and point to in terms of these nominal Syrian people being able to return to life as close to normal as possible under the circumstances, going back to their hometown in Jarabulus, inshallah. So this will be the conclusion of tonight's news segment. We, as we said, are going to be continuing with the subject of Syria in our social segment tonight. And just as we did last night, the first part, we're going to be speaking with Professor emaad.muhanna, looking at continuing our political analysis of what's happening in Syria and Aleppo in particular. And then following this, Brother Junaid Dar, he's going to be hosting one of our sheikhs, looking at the Islamic perspective of this this campaign by the forces allied to Bashar al-Assad in Aleppo. We'd like to, inshallah, take a short break and come back to continue with our social segment. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hada Tonight. We would like, as promised, to continue looking at the subject of Aleppo. We have been invited, joined by our guest this evening, our esteemed professor, Dr. emaad.muhanna. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Salam. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back. This is the second day this week you've been with us. Now, I'd like to jump right into our conversation and start with a question that I failed to ask you yesterday that I think is important to understand. And I want you to rate or judge, you're a professor, I'll be your student, to judge my reasons why I think now is the time that this intensified campaign started. One, I thought that perhaps it has to do with the approaching winter, the season. That if you've got snow and ice on the ground, you can move troops and equipment, but it's much easier if there isn't. Secondly, the end of the Obama administration, you've talked about this before, it creates a vacuum. People can be more bold in doing things. And thirdly, Russia just conducted national parliamentary elections just 10 days ago. So which of these is more correct?
I think the most important one is the Obama administration end. Because what this does, it creates even a marketing campaign for the Democrats, that they're able to solve problems in the Middle East that is always a region on fire. It also creates more confidence of the Americans in the Democrats. And you can say that this is really helping Mrs. Clinton to overcome a lot of things that Mr. Trump is also offering. So at the end of every administration, particularly if it goes for 8 years, 2 periods, you always find something happens. Bush did with Iraq, and then before Afghanistan was in there, there was something in Libya. So they always create something for somebody after them to continue. And here it takes us to what we call a long-term foreign policy implemented by United States. United States is one of the countries that looks at policies as the most important thing that drive any events, whether internally or externally. They don't work on coincidence. They always plan things. So if you look at even the new Middle East, the new Middle East is not new to us, even though it's in the past 5 to 10 years we've been talking about it, but in actual fact it goes back to the 1800s. How the Jews want to have their own Jewish state, and how they can get into the Middle East, because as we know there were other countries also offered, like Argentina or Zambia, but they've always had that intention to get into the Middle East. So they always planned in advance what they can do to the Arabs to keep them, number one, occupied with problems in their own hands. Number two is create some sort of also divide in the world between who's with and who's against. The issue of Syria is, I think, came quite quickly because the plan wasn't that way. They expected that Egypt is going to collapse in 2011. And I think that would help them to get rid of or destroy the Egyptian and the Syrian army at the same time. But I think with the changes taking place on the political scene in Egypt, made it very difficult for them to stick to the same plan. So they had to hurry and get something going on in the Middle East, and Syria was the spot. They couldn't get into Yemen because it's too messy for them. So why don't you get to Yemen then? If you are looking at human rights and peaceful transition of a system or a regime. But they wanted Syria, number one, because Syria is the neighbor of Israel. Number two, let's call it Israel owes them the Golan Heights, so they want to keep Syria occupied so they don't get into the Golan Heights. Also, it's on the border of Europe, and again, Europeans are participating in that. But again, because it was done in a rush without proper planning, as they always do it, it backfired because it created a lot of refugees and refugees basically aimed for Europe. So, but in the end, they gather all of them economically to support refugees as long as their own agenda was implemented. I think the rush to get into Syria made Russia move quite quickly, because Syria is regarded not just an alliance, but it's an extension of the Russian national security, just like Iran. And the two countries, Iran and Syria, are the two arms of Russia in the region, because as we always say, Russia enjoys being in the warm waters of the Middle East, because that's where the resources are, particularly oil and gas. Syria, I think, went quite badly. After the changes in Egypt, Bashar started to basically get more and more support from the Arabs, framing him as the good guy, as we said yesterday, and regarding the opposite rebels are Muslim Brotherhood. So it's an extension of what happened in Egypt, and therefore he became politically very much supported. And I think that justifies the absenteeism of the Arab League in the region, because the Arab League is totally non-existent. There is no even proper statements that condemn that. So at this point, it has become very messy, because I think even going out of Syria, to the United States is not going to be easy. You can't just pull out after the issue that was created. There is a lot of movements in the Middle East at this point. The Arabs, as we said, very busy. Economically, worldwide is not going very well. The region is seeking, or the world is seeking, energy resources, and that only exists in the Middle East. So they're trying to get piece of the cake, or part of that cake. I think in the end is that Bashar is playing on play hard to get. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's hitting them very hard. So in the end, it will be some sort of negotiation with Bashar, whether you would like to leave the country, please, and let us do something with it. I think Syria economically, on the economic front, it's going to cause major problems for the Arabs rebuilding Syria, and it will never be built. We've seen that, scenario in Iraq. It was never built. We've seen that in Libya. So it's never going to really change. But in the end, it creates one conclusion, which is the Arabs are basically very much closed on themselves, can't think of any expansion politically, and therefore they will obey whatever orders are given to them, because you've seen what we've done in Syria, and we can do the same to you as well.
Orders given by Western governments?
By Western governments. And this is, I think, is going to change very soon. My expectation is there is a new generation of youth coming forward with a liberal thinking, totally disagreeing even to the aid that is giving. So if you look at even the aid given to some countries like Egypt or Syria or Jordan from the UK, if you actually analyze the aid, it's not really adding any value, because they give you the aid and then they tell you what to do with it. So it doesn't go into agriculture, it doesn't go to hospitals, it doesn't go to anything like that. So in the end, it's become, useless, absolutely. So there is a new generation of youth that's coming out, started to understand the conspiracy. Is that, in simple terms, I create Daesh and then push them to you, and then I give you weapon to fight Daesh, and then I'm supplying both with weapon, and I'm standing the godfather. So the policy of a good father that has always been implemented in the past 100 years, I think it's going to change, because the youth of this nation understand how it's going, and this is going to change.
And this is what you've been saying for weeks now, that one of the outcomes of the so-called Arab Spring was that young people learned what it meant to think independently, not to walk with the traditions.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so to answer the question, you think that perhaps the most important reason why now is because of the U.S. president about to leave office.
Exactly. It's because you've got a month or so. So it is very important for him to keep to the party, because as we always describe it, it's America runs politics like a big marketing company. You just have to keep a chain. one leads to the other. So what you've seen from Clinton, he has to leave something for Bush, and then Bush leaves it to Obama, and that's how it goes. And this is a continuity of politics, you know, how it's not isolated politics. So, and this is the difficulty you find, you know, in most developing countries, if not all, that the very much isolated politics. You get Nasser, for example, he takes a certain type of approach. The Arab nationalism, for example, Sadat plays on something else, like the economic development. Mubarak played totally on Western alliances, leaving totally the Arab nationalism. So if you had a continuity in politics, would have been in a different situation by now. And this is what you see very good happening in the Western society, where there is a long-term plans. Where is it that we want to go? And if you look at 1906, one of the major meetings for the establishment of the Jewish state and the new Middle East. So it goes back for a very long time, yet it's going to be implemented now. So they plan 100 years in advance, but we actually don't plan for tomorrow even.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to look at some of the recent things that have been happening militarily. As of today, there were 2 hospitals destroyed in Aleppo.
Yeah.
That leaves only 3 that are capable and equipped to handle medical emergencies.
Yeah.
And then last week, this destruction of this UN aid convoy in Aleppo. There were nearly 20 trucks destroyed.
Yeah.
And Russia and Syria saying we didn't do it. And
Yeah.
in fact, Russia has taken an extra step and says we have evidence that a U.S. drone was
Yeah.
in the area and it was armed, and perhaps indicating indirectly that the U.S. did it.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens. It's under the table politics, and I believe that U.S. could do it, because if we actually go back in history, September 11 was never done by the Arabs. It was done by the Americans. It's a proof in theory, very much to create a justification that these people are terrorists. Now, the fact here is, yes, Russia and Syria, the regime, the official regime, could be accused of that, destroying the convoy to prevent it from getting to the rebels. So they want to kill them.
Yeah.
But I think it's very obvious to be done. It will create a very obvious message that you did this to kill people, and this is going to aggravate the Western society and the United Nations, particularly on Bashar. And therefore, I don't think he's going to do it. Even if he's done it, it will be through some other troops, probably from other countries. But I don't think he will do it because it's very obvious.
To destroy the aid convoy.
The convoy, yeah. It is very obvious that it could be him. And therefore, I don't think he's done it. Whoever has done it, even if we don't want to accuse the United States of doing it to create some sort of more chaos in the region, is that it is somebody that's trying to fuel it up more.
Yeah.
Keep it going.
I
Why?
see.
Because some people are making money. And if you leave this example aside and go back to Vietnam, why was John Kennedy assassinated? Because he wanted to stop the war. That's exactly how it works in the world. And I think was Nixon, the following, the prime minister, the vice president, that's how it works. Major powers play on wars, supply weapons to both sides, and in the end, they sit as the godfather and control resources
War
economically.
is very profitable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I don't think Bashar would have done it. Russia wouldn't do it either, because it's very obvious. Because you can see, obviously, that fingers are pointed at Russia, first of all. So they're not that stupid to do something like this. I think it's somebody that you wouldn't think of would do it. Whether it's
That has an interest in
keeping it,
escalating the tensions and making
absolutely.
Russia and Syria look bad.
Absolutely. And also it wouldn't be small troops, you know, somebody like, you know, rebels against the rebels, because, you know, satellites and things like that will discover them. So again, it is somebody who's got equipments.
A lot of them too.
Exactly.
18 lorries.
Exactly. It's got equipments, and at the same time they got the technology and the expertise.
That's right.
to destroy such a large number of these are not rebels.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they probably can crash one or two, but not the whole lot. So what you're talking about here is some troop that is basically organized, has a lot of technology, spying technology, for example, the route itself where it's going. That's another point. How did you know that
inside
this is the
information?
Route? Yeah, exactly. So that's how I think, because it's always comes back to that. Look at all conspiracy in the world. It's always the closest to you is the one that's doing it. Why? Because you need information. So I think by applying the theory of John Kennedy and the theory of September 11, I think United States would have done it to keep fueling it up and also aggravate the world against Bashar. But obviously Bashar wouldn't do it because it's too obvious.
It's too obvious. Yeah. Now you just mentioned the war in Vietnam, a highly controversial war. Yeah. In this war, one of the things that generated a lot of sentiment against the war was this the photographs and the videos. The images that were coming out of Vietnam made the nominal U.S. citizen highly angry, and we had monumental civil rights leaders
about 240,000
urging,
soldiers,
demonstrating to get out of it, such as Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. What do you think about the role that photographs and images are going to have in terms of how is this going to affect?
Yes, it's a new approach actually in media. It's called the storytelling. And the storytelling goes in a form of a story or some sort of images following. And that's this approach is not new, but it's coming out being a good way of delivering the message. Over hundreds of years, excuse me, parents use photos to give stories to the kids. You know, if you look at children's stories, they're not full of words, but they're full of pictures. And you say, here is the line that goes into the, his mother. And so it's all these stories basically deliver a message in less talks and also make it memorable.
The world's earliest writing system used a series of pictures, the hieroglyphics.
Exactly. So pictures are always, they always stick in the mind. And it's exactly the same thing that doesn't matter how you write about Vietnam, and I think was 240,000 lost their lives, it wouldn't tell 10% of a picture of what a picture could tell. And that's exactly the same thing that is happening. And let me tell you that the Jewish people always use that. We always see on TV the Holocaust. Why? Because they want you to picture yourself naked, walking in lines, to see how horrible Hitler was. Exactly the same thing that the Western society always try to frame it in a way that they want to. And during September 11th, there was a lot of investigation around the picture that were coming out, particularly from Palestine, because they were picturing people in Palestine happy and making celebrations because of September 11th. And it turned out that these pictures are old. So here you're trying to frame some sort of, some group of people that they actually with the bombing of September of the Twin Towers. So going back to a question, the issue of the image is always memorable, and it remains not like words, because people, forget words, or mankind. We forget words, but we don't forget pictures, because it always creates some sort of feeling.
It evokes an emotion.
Exactly. It reminds you all the way. It's like you see somebody, in an accident. So every time you picture it, the feeling comes back to you. And this is an approach of creating a psychological sympathy, if you like, with the case they fight. So they bring, in September 11, the two Twin Towers collapsed and people on the ground. In wars, they do the same. So, unfortunately, we as Arabs, we couldn't use that.
So do you see this working in favor or against Assad?
No, it's against, definitely. It's against, because who's promoting it? It's the people that have the technology.
But he's generating his own images. Him with children, participating in elections.
But how wide it goes.
The Western press is not running his stuff.
Exactly.
They're running photos of children.
Exactly. Exactly. So media has become now its third weapon in the world. You can drive people to fight with another country just because of an image.
But is it going to translate into anything concrete, you know, rallying support to fight Assad?
It's already creating a support, because we also need to look at the situations in Europe. Besides the United States, Canada participates, you know, in certain areas, but when it comes to Europe, there's economic problems in Europe. They don't want to get involved in many cases. We've seen how you know, the government in England was accused of certain actions taken wrong or decisions made wrong when in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So Europeans are very conservative about war. They don't want it because they've seen and experienced the war in the Second World War.
Yeah.
But United States was fighting out of their land.
That's right.
So the Americans, all they saw, the Americans saw was Vietnam. But they didn't see the actual...
it wasn't on the soil, American soil.
Exactly. So Europeans feel that.
Yeah.
Europeans see that. You've seen Mussolini in Italy. You've seen Hitler in Germany. You know, Austria and Germany. You've seen Churchill in England.
All
so
of
it's all
Europe
over.
was in flames.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Europeans are very much against war, and they participate only when it leads to economic benefits, aside from England. So England has got a, you know, a strong alliance with the United States. Sometimes they participate in things that they don't need, but that's politically. But the rest of the countries won't participate unless it's humanitarian aid, like Germany or the Scandinavians, Sweden, Norway. These are countries that participate for a cause, but for the gain of politics, no, only England following United States. So what we will see, yes, more and more people hating wars. Unfortunately, the people that hate wars are the ones that make decisions? No.
Right.
It's the ones that love war that make decisions.
and profit from it.
Professor,
we'd like to take a look at a report on our subject of Syria and come back to continue with our guests.
How delightful you are, and how great is your scent. How magnificent you are, and how great is your sanctity. But by the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, the sanctity of a believer, his wealth and his blood, is greater than the sight of Allah than your sanctity. Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, talking to the Kaaba. If this is the weight of one Muslim, what would the weight be of hundreds? 100 worlds, and that of 1,000 worlds? These words a matter of serious contemplation for every Muslim today, as we witness hundreds of thousands of Muslims in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Kashmir, Palestine, Pakistan, Chechnya, Burma, and other Islamic lands being slaughtered, starved, and humiliated. If this is the weight of one Muslim, what would the weight be of hundreds? Recently in Aleppo, hundreds of airstrikes have pummeled the city, home to more than 250,000 people, since the Syrian government, backed by Russia, announced a renewed comprehensive offensive Thursday following the collapse of a short-lived ceasefire. Sunday's death toll marked an increase in casualties. On Sunday, Save the Children warned that approximately half the casualties being treated in eastern Aleppo were children. The Russian forces, combined with the continued siege preventing anyone from leaving the area, has created one of the worst situations for Syrian children in more than 5 years of war. For this reason, we prescribed for the children of Israel that whoever kills a person, unless it be for manslaughter or for mischief in the land, it is as though he had killed all men. And whoever saves a life, it is as though he had saved the lives of all men.
يا شباب في حدا غير هالبنت اللي جوا؟
من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. A very painful but important subject. We appreciate you being bold and courageous to continue with us on this subject of Syria. We would like to continue with our guest this evening, Dr. emaad.muhanna. Doctor, I'd like to ask you about these terms that the United States and Britain are using to describe Syria and Russia. They're throwing terms about war crimes charges, that they're barbaric. Do you think that these are politicized terms because Russia is virtually doing the same kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's just
before we get to that, I think the footage is really remind me of Prophet's hadith when he said that if two Muslims meet face to face with their swords, the killer and the victim are both in the fire. So whether you are a killer or a victim of confrontation, in a fighting confrontation, I think it really answers the question. So whatever Bashar is doing wrong, whatever the rebels are doing is also wrong, because you're both fighting. And in this case, if it goes into a chaos like this, where civilians are paying the price, I think you need to step down. And here we're not saying that let Bashar do whatever he wants, but you're looking at the bigger picture, and looking at the bigger picture wisely, and selecting the right peaceful solution. It doesn't mean weakness, but it means wisdom. So what has been happening at this point is that rebels funded and supported by powers that want to keep this fuming, and the Syrian regime is also supported. So in the end, we're talking about millions of civilians that fled the country, and the country is totally destroyed. When it comes to terminology, is basically for the use of media, as we said, is one of the you know, I regard it the second strongest weapon in the world, if not the first, because you can get people to fight with their own hands by just fuming up an ideology to say, you know, this is this particular, you know, Shia are coming to take the Sunni places, for example, and that can just get people to fight. The ideology is something that is good, and it goes hand in hand with political gains. You always have to frame people in there, and it goes after the Second World War, where we've seen in one of the scenes that you know, how did the United States get into the war in the Second World War? You know, framing Japanese as being a terrorist, and you know, in Pearl Harbor, and whether they did it or not. So here, using a media to create some sort of impression about somebody that you want to attack. The same thing you see all over the world, you know, during Osama bin Laden's time, even during political gains. You know, a candidate would say on the opponent, you know, he's doing this bad, and the other one replies. This is just a media gain and for public consumption. But unfortunately, it's very powerful, particularly on you know, peoples that understand that type of terminology. So if you talk about war crimes to people from the Middle East, it makes no sense to them. Well, what is war crimes? You know, it's somebody that kills people. Okay, fine, we know that. But to the Europeans, it's a bad thing, you know, to be a war crime. It's something unethical. So the meaning is slightly taken differently in Europe, and therefore it aggravates Europeans to be against Bashar. And I don't think here they're looking for military support. What they're looking for is an economic and political support, where Syria in the end can be isolated and Russia behind it. So it will, through these political terminology, is that they aggravating Europeans to create more sanctions on Russia, because there's already some penalties imposed on Russia. And I think that also makes them feel, you know, we're not going to lift these sanctions. We're not going to lift them on Russia because Russia is still doing bad things. So here it creates some sort of differences between Europeans on the Western side and Russia. And that gap between Russia and Europe, Western Europe, is actually for the benefit of the United States. That's divide and rule. Very simple. Because if Russia gets into the European Union, you've got the military and a power on Russian side, and you've got the economic and investment on the Western Europe. I think they can be a great competitor to the United States.
But what does this say about European intellectual life and their values if they're willing to say that Russia and Syria are doing unethical war crimes, but they're not willing to acknowledge that the United States is doing the same thing in Israel, in occupied Palestine?
Yes. This is again, you know, the right or the righteous is not black and white, unfortunately. So you might say, this guy is a thief. Yes, he's a thief. You didn't lie. But this one is another thief, but you didn't talk about him. So you're giving me just the one that you want to talk about. So the fact here is, Europeans know very well that what Israel is doing in Palestine is illegal.
Right.
When it comes to confrontation, is Israel doing the right thing in Palestine? They say no. But when it comes to situations like this, they just don't raise it. It's a different issue, they tell you. So I think what the matter or the issue that is affecting Europe at this point is the economic recession. I think Spain, Greece, Portugal are affecting them. The withdrawal of England from the EU is really not helping at all. Russia, from another side, is pressurizing Europe through the energy resources, particularly the gas. They've got the tap. So here, I think Europe, and again, we don't want to talk about people on the ground level because they've got nothing to do. There's nothing in their hand. We're talking about politicians. And politicians can't sell the ideologies or the intellectual you know, belief.
Well, another perspective of it is that it's very consistent to this overall 100-year plan that to be quiet about Palestine and U.S. support of Israel, but at the same time, the destruction of Syria works towards that same overall objective.
Yes, but the issue of Palestine is slightly different because Europe had the hand in there. Most of the great meetings or the large meetings were in England. So Europe had really a great involvement in the occupation of Palestine.
And that's what I'm saying.
They are guilty.
That both a destroyed Syria and an occupied Palestine work towards the same new Middle East plan.
Yes, definitely. And that's what we were talking about. It's a long-term plan, but just bits and pieces, stepping stone. You know, break Iraq and then isolate Iran, then Iran becomes an alliance to the superpowers, and then use Iran to get into Yemen. And then Iran feeds into Hezbollah and Lebanon. And then Hezbollah fights basically with Israel. So you've got Iran feeding into Hezbollah, Lebanon, the Shia side, and the Bashar. Now, the near future will see a turnaround where Iran will pay the price, because they're just isolating them for now because they cannot handle two powers at the same time. So they want now the time for the Arabs. And unfortunately here it becomes again the difficulty or being naive as some of the leaders think, and we talked about that before, saying nobody's your friend. Because people are saying in the Middle East, you know, Russians are our friend now because, you know, they coming in, giving us aid and giving us investment. Nobody's your friend. He's just taken them for a time until the first assignment is done, and then he's going to turn against you. So the fact here is Russia is supporting Syria. He doesn't care about Bashar. Putin doesn't care about Syria. It's a fact. You guys are Muslims. He's not Muslim. He's not going to care. But why is he doing it? Because he doesn't want to stay naked in front of the NATO forces. So Syria is an extension to his national security. It's a front. So if that wall falls, they're going to get to him.
The buffer is gone.
Exactly. So the same thing he's done in Georgia. Why did he get into Georgia? Because he knew that there's some sort of link between United States and Georgia. Why did he get into the Ukraine?
Crimea.
All right? In Ukraine, exactly the same thing. There is a connection with the United States. So he's got to keep that zone safe. And this is what we talk about the Arab national security. And in one of the episodes, we talked about the 4 exits that we can block the entire Middle East. Nobody's in or out.
And this,
I've got Gibraltar.
This has to be your last comment. Go ahead and finish this up.
We've got the Gibraltar on Morocco, so I can close Middle East, Mediterranean Sea into the Atlantic. I've got Aden I can close between Red Sea and the Pacific, and then we've got Hormuz on the Arab Gulf, and we've got Suez Canal, and we've got the Dead Sea. So I can block the entire Middle East, but that, if we have a long-term plan to protect the Arab nation security, we could do that.
But there first has to be a military.
Not really. You need cultured people that understand where we're going, people that are educated, lead the country with plans, long-term plans. Have people understand that first, and you can do that afterwards.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much again, Professor, for being with us. This will conclude the first part of our social segment looking at Syria. We will continue from a different perspective after a short break. Brother Junaid Dar is hosting one of our sheikhs here to continue looking at this from a humanitarian Islamic perspective, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, to our live program, Huda Tonight, joining us here in segment number 3. Now, dear viewers, as you have been seeing over the last day and today as well, we have a very special program talking about a very important subject, and that is of Syria. You can see on social media, you can see on your news outlets that Syria is being bombarded once again. The bombardment has intensified, killing lots of women, children and innocent people, and it's time that we come out and speak about this in a very frank manner, and inshallah ta'ala that is the objective of our program today. Not just that, but over the last few days, as you've been seeing on your screens, the militia of Bashar al-Assad has been responsible for the killing, the destruction of hospitals, which consist of casualties, innocent people, once again at the face of his brutality. My dear brothers and sisters, some reports suggest that the death toll has risen up to 450,000 civilians, and reports suggest that most of those are women and children. The city of Aleppo is being sieged. The people are not able to get access to food and drinking water. So we really need to speak about the subject in an open and frank manner. And we want you to join us in this discussion. We want you to pick up your phones and to speak to us, express to us your feelings, your pain, what it is that you're feeling. We want to hear it here live in the studio. If you can't get to your phones, then please go onto Facebook and drop a comment on our page, Huda TV, and inshallah ta'ala, I'll try my best to read those comments out here live in the studio. So let's begin by introducing our guest, and then we'll go straight into our discussion. If I can begin by introducing our respected Sheikh Karim Abu Zaid, who is the Imam of Dar al-Tawheed in the States, and you work very closely with us here on Huda TV. We've done a number of programs together as well. Sheikh, I'd like to give you a warm welcome and say Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Jazakum Allahu khairan, Brother Junaid, and it's always a pleasure to be on Huda TV and with you in particular. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much. Sheikh, I want to go straight into the subject as it is very important. Firstly, I would like to ask you, how are your feelings and your responses when you see what is going on in Syria, the tragedy, the catastrophe, or the massacre that's taking place?
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. First of all, it's extremely sad to see that the blood of Muslims is without any concern by the forces of this world.
Okay.
When a non-Muslim is killed, one person, you hear all the media outlets, and you know they cover the news and they address it, but yet we hear sometimes 150, 200, 300 a day, and you mentioned some of them are hospitals, but no one dare care about even bringing this up. This is really the sad piece. The comparison between the coverage, just one non-Muslim being killed somewhere, and dozens of Muslims being killed, just that.
Sure.
the other sad piece is the passiveness of Muslims.
Okay.
Muslims are not even caring about their brothers and sisters in Syria and what they are going through, except the few who are offering their hand, their help. But actually, in some cases, we actually hear people condemning the Syrians.
Okay.
Some states actually, and their media outlet, they speak bad about the Syrians as if the Syrians are the criminals and those who are bombing them and killing them are the victims. All of this is really saddening to any Muslim who has some leftover faith in the heart. Because the sanctity of the human life, we know it's one of the higher objectives. Actually, it is number 2 after the preservation of one's faith, one's religion. We know that the holistic aims or the objectives of our religion, of our law in Islam, is the preservation of the religion. Number 2, the preservation of the human life.
Sheikh, that's quite surprising because when we listen to the Western media outlets, they will put or address Islam as if it's a bloodthirsty religion and has no respect for human life. But here you are saying the opposite, that Islam actually, it gives the human life the utmost respect.
I just mentioned 2 of the holistic aims. There are 5 of them.
Okay.
But look at this. Even though they mark the religion to be number 1, that you're after preserving your deen. You're after preserving your deen because this is why you were created.
Sure.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created mankind, but to worship. So the main purpose of you and me is to worship. So your goal, your utmost goal, your number 1 objective is the preservation of your deen. Some of the scholars actually, we have a debate that they said the life comes first.
Okay.
How? In some cases, we know that if your life is threatened because of your religion, you're allowed to conceal your religion.
Sure.
As long as you still believe in your heart. And the story of Ammar ibn Yasir is known. When Ammar came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, the disbelievers arrested me and they forced me to speak bad about you and Allah, about Islam."
Sure.
And for me to flee, to run away from their punishment, their oppression, I had to give them what they requested me to give. Basically, he spoke bad about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jibril alayhi salam came with the verse in Surah An-Nahl, من كفر بالله من بعد إيمانه إلا من أكره وقلبه مطمئن بالإيمان ولكن من شرح بالكفر صدره. The essence of the verse, as long as you have the deen in your heart, even if you articulate something bad about the religion,
sure,
to save your life, you're allowed to do this. And that's why they debated. So Islam absolutely is not allowed. Listen, the only time in Islam you're allowed to kill another human being is in self-defense.
Sure.
You're defending your life, your own life, your wealth. من مات دون أهله, your family. من مات دون أهله وماله فهو شهيد. The other time is when you kill a combatant.
Sure.
You're somebody who is fighting you in a declared war. But absolutely, Islam is not a bloodthirsty religion, and these are just misconceptions about Islam, and we know it.
Okay.
You know, and we know it. But what can we do? But we do our best to correct these misconceptions.
Sure. Also, Sheikh, you've addressed the issue of Islam preserving human life, but also Islam also talks about not spreading corruption on the land, in the earth, as Allah says in numerous places in the Quran.
Absolutely.
But is this not corruption in the land, what is taking place in Syria?
You see what is happening in Syria. I mean, applying the principles of the Sharia on what's happening in Syria. We do have fighting factions in Syria, whether the Ahl Sunnah, the people of the Sunnah, the followers of the Sunnah, and we do have the Shia, and we simply have these imperial powers getting involved, whether the United States of America and Russia. My concern and the concern of any Muslim right now, that you go and bomb women and children and hospitals.
Sure.
In order to fight your enemy. You're supposed to fight. If there is somebody who's fighting you out there, you just keep that battle with that person.
Sure.
But women and children of Syria are not targets of your warfare, basically, your airplanes, your bombs. And this is what the Assad regime is doing, and this is what Russia is doing, and this is what Hizb, I hate to say the word because they don't really, I don't call them Hezbollah, you know, it is amazing. This battle in Syria has certainly unveiled this party or this group, because a lot of Muslims were deceived, far deceived,
sure.
When they were engaged in fights with Israel at a certain time, maybe 5-6 years ago. Actually, some people would actually support them, but now they understand that Shia, that particular sect, the extreme Shia, like that Hizb, Lat, I call them, because they have nothing to do with Hezbollah at all. And of course the Iran and the mercenary, the people. So what I'm trying to say, Brother Junaid, here, you see, we understand that there are Sunni fighting forces in Syria.
Sure.
They need to keep that battle with them, not to go and bomb hospitals, not to go and bomb homes. We're seeing footage of children being taken from under the wreckage of a building. Why in the world do you go and bomb a building in order to fight someone with a machine gun somewhere else? This is what we're talking about.
Sure.
And even in a declared battle in Islam, the Prophet ﷺ used to command the leader of this army not to kill a woman, not to kill a child, not to kill a monk who is somewhere in his sanctuary, not to cut a tree without the need for that. If they are not using these trees to shoot you, don't kill a cow, an animal. You see, you only fight those who وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah, this is really the painful piece, and this is what is happening in Syria, and it's very sad because the world is keeping a deaf ear, a blind eye about it, and they are waiting until these poor Syrian children, poor Syrian elders and women are finished off, and then, you know, you hardly get a word out there. And this is the sad piece, and this is the top line of corruption that we have to talk about.
Okay, Sheikh, we'll come to our next question in just a moment, but I'd like to address the viewers here. Dear viewers, do pick up your phones and do call us. You will see our numbers running across the screen right about there. You've got 2 numbers. Do call us, engage with us in the program. Tell us about your thoughts and your comments. How do you feel when you see these images on the screens of young women, young children, babies being killed for no reason? So do call us. You've got 2 numbers there. And if you're calling outside of Egypt, don't forget to use the code. If you can't get to your phone, then do go to Facebook, inshallah ta'ala. I have it open in front of me and I will read out your comments very soon. Sheikh, I want to have a look now. We've talked about double standards, and you've clearly highlighted how the Western world, if somebody is killed, how media outlets all take it out of proportion, rightly so if he's killed unjustly. But why is there this silence on Muslim life? Like the hospital that was just destroyed just a couple of days ago, it is reported that 96 children were actually killed, and that wasn't reported on any media outlet. Why do we have such a massive bias or two-facedness from these media outlets?
You see, what is happening in Syria is very interesting. You simply have a potential of a Sunni Muslim governing state replacing Assad.
Okay.
You're getting that?
Right.
The West is afraid of that, and the countries which are surrounding Syria, they are afraid of the establishment of such a state.
Okay.
Because who's fighting in Syria to liberate, Syria from the Assad regime?
So the unification of Sunni Muslims is what
Yes.
they're afraid of.
Let me put it this way,
Okay.
and I'm going to be blunt with you. There is a scheme out there to finish off as many Sunni Muslims as possible
Subhanallah.
in the face of this earth.
Subhanallah. Very sad.
And there is unspoken agreement between Shia and the West to execute the job. Let me put it this way. And
Okay.
this is what's happening.
Okay.
Now, we do have major Sunni states surrounding Syria, but these Sunni states are ruled by secular or army generals.
Right.
The existence of a Muslim state right there in Syria would be a threat to their power and authority. And that's why they are making sure that their state media are not addressing the situation the way that we're addressing it.
So, Sheikh, what you're effectively saying is that even some of the Sunni regimes are actually complicit in the killing and the activities that are taking place in
because they
Aleppo.
are afraid of the establishment of a Sunni governing state in Syria.
Sure.
Because this is the potential replacement for the Assad regime.
Okay.
These mujahideen, it's called the Jaysh al-Hur, or the Free Army.
Sure.
They are the automatic replacement for the Assad regime. First of all, the West see this a threat to themselves, and the states surrounding Syria, without naming anybody, so we don't get in trouble, they are afraid of such a regime to come into the world, because it will threaten their authority.
Okay.
And this is why there is a scheme out there to finish this off.
Okay.
But I always have full trust in this beautiful verse, وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ. They plot, we don't plot. Allah said, don't worry about plotting, I'll take care of the plotting.
Sure.
And Allah will plot. You see, Allah will take care of the situation. And Allah will address the situation.
Sure.
His way. And I'm telling you, what is happening in this part of the world is so miraculous in a way because it's sending clear messages to us. Who are the enemies? Who are the friends of Islam and Muslims?
It's almost like as if Allah is doing a purification process between those who really and truly love Allah and those who truly against Him.
Only blind people will not be able to see the picture clear.
Sure.
The picture is crystal clear, and day after day is getting clearer and clearer. But subhanallah, Allah will take care of the situation, because we believe in the qadr, we believe in the divine destiny.
Sure.
Nothing happens, Brother Junaid, without Allah's will.
Okay.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills or willed for this to happen.
Sure.
For a wisdom, inshallah.
Okay. Sheikh, I want to talk about some other sensitive matters which need to be addressed. You talked about...
You're getting me into these sensitive issues. I thought we were going to talk about the sanctity of the human life and just...
It's nothing that sensitive.
All right.
But you talked about the failure on behalf of some of the leaders in some of the surrounding countries. But some people will also say that we as Muslims, just common Muslims, we are also to blame because we don't have a link, or we don't do anything active to support the people of Syria. Would you share that sentiment?
Absolutely, but there is multiple ways where you can help the people of Syria.
Sure.
Of course, you know, first of all, your dua.
Okay.
Where is the dua? I'm going to look at the camera right now and ask the viewers, when was the last time you made dua for the people of Syria? When? In your sujood. Have you ever remembered these children and women? And dua is the weapon of the believer.
Sure.
Brother Junaid. Where is your dua? Number two, you got social media.
Okay.
Instead of spreading comments that pointless, has no value whatsoever, why don't you promote, you know, what's happening and get the words out? Get the word out about what's happening in Syria.
So we should raise awareness through social media.
Raise awareness in social media. A lot of the young men, Muslim young men, youth now, they spend tremendous amount of time online, Facebooking or whatever they are doing. They can go ahead and spread this out. You know, let the word go out. Of course, if you're able to help financially, help the refugees, help the Muslim, help the children of Syria, the women of children of Syria, and so forth.
Okay, Sheikh, I'm going to have to ask you to just hold your thought for a moment. We've got a phone call coming in from all the way from Romania. We have Brother Mario from Romania. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. If I could ask you to talk to me via the phone and just switch your television off for a second. Go ahead, give us your question or your comments, please.
My question?
Sure.
My question is about Syria, having a lot of friends from Syria actually, and they are giving me the stories about what is happening there. Yes, there is, let's say, Russia, which is supporting Assad, and we have the Americans, which they are supporting the Free Army. And actually, in the middle of these leaders, we can call it, we have the mothers and the children, which they have to suffer, and all the people of this country, we can say.
Yes, go ahead, Brother Mario.
I don't know. This is going on from the last 5 years, we can say, and we don't see any change. There was last week a week of break, we can call it. Then today there was bombing in Aleppo, one of the biggest two hospitals not functional anymore, starting from today. Every day there are more bad stories about this country.
Brother,
where they
sure, Brother Mario, when you see these images, how does it make you feel?
Very sad. Very
Sure.
sad. Actually, I didn't see never this kind of things in my life after I arrived in Egypt, because I'm living in Egypt now.
Okay, okay.
And this actually, they are very deeply sad for me to see it, and still I can't understand why all this, they have to go on. And,
Sure. Sure, thank you very much. Yes, Brother Mario. All right, thank you very much, Brother Mario, calling us from Egypt, but you're originally from Romania, as I understand. Thank you very much for sharing with us your sentiments, your feelings, and your emotions. Sheikh, it's very powerful what is taking place in Syria. People from around the world, Muslim or non-Muslim, are sympathizing with what is taking place. The injustice is just too much, Sheikh. What can we say?
Well, the one thing that I can tell Brother Mario and the rest of the viewers who are feeling the heaviness of the heart, you know, it's very sad that you're sitting out there and seeing women and children being simply slaughtered with nothing that you can do except, you know, the few points that I made right before the call, you know, making dua, maybe use social media, raise awareness.
Sure.
But, you know, I just want to tell the brothers and the sisters who are having that heaviness of the heart, that rest assured that these individuals who are the cause of this, they will receive their punishment.
Okay.
If not in this world, in the hereafter. And I'll just share with them a couple of ahadith.
Sure, please.
Abdullah ibn Abbas, في سنن الإمام النسائي, he was asked whether the killer, the one who intentionally kills another person, have a chance for repentance. Abdullah ibn Abbas got so upset, like we say in English, got so livid.
Okay.
He reacted in such a manner. And he said, ثَكَلَتْهُ أُمُّ. Basically an expression which means, may his mother lose him.
Okay.
Look at this scene. يَأْتِ الْمَقْتُولُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. The person who was killed in the day of judgment will come. يَحْمِلُ رَأْسَهُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Carrying his head on his hand. With the other hand, يَجُرُّ قَاتِلَهُ. He's dragging his killer. The veins of his neck are pouring blood. تَشْخُبُ أَوْدَاجُهُ دَمًا. And he will go and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he will say, Ya Rabb, O Allah, ask him why he killed me, why he took my life. Imagine such a scene, a person who kills have to go through this. These individuals, when Asma bint Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha learned that her son Abdullah ibn Zubayr was killed by the famous, Iraqi guy, he asked her, did you see what I did to your son? You know, he killed Abdullah ibn Zubayr and he hung him on a cross.
Okay.
You know what she said to him? Yes, I saw. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, his name. Yes, I saw. I saw that you messed up his life, but he messed up your akhirah, your hereafter.
Okay.
You took away his life, but he's going to mess up your akhirah, your hereafter. Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. We've got a phone call from Nigeria, so let's take this and then we'll come back to the discussion. We have with us Sheikh Abu Bakr from Nigeria. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very, very well. Alhamdulillah, and you?
Very well. It's good to speak to you again. It's been some time. But unfortunately, the topic for today is not one of celebration like it was last time, but we are talking about the sad story of Syria. Sheikh, what words would you express about this situation?
Wallahi, subhanallah, فإنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. اللهم أجرنا في مصيبتنا وأخلفنا خيرا منها. It is really a sad thing for us here in Nigeria and all across the world, the entire Muslim world, seeing what is happening in Syria. We ask that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them ease. For the shuhada from amongst them, may Allah grant them Jannah. And for those who are living, this is a test for them, as it is a test for us as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them steadfast and make them pass this test. Surely I have been listening to the speaker, and I must say to him, Jazakallah khair, may Allah increase him in health and in taqwa. All that he has said regarding the reality of the one who takes the life of another. Similar to the narration of what we find in the Quran, of what happened between the sons of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, Qabil and Habil, where the other one threatened to kill his brother, and he said to him, you know, he wouldn't retaliate, for verily I hope or I wish that you will carry my burden and your burden as well. Ithmi wa ithmik, you will carry my sin or my burden and carry your burden as well. So there is a burden to be carried by those who are the aggressors upon those who are being oppressed today. But really it's a sad thing. My heart is filled with sadness. The tears roll so many times when we see the images. At some point, I have to stop even looking at these images because I almost feel helpless, and I feel the only thing I can do is to make dua for them and to ask that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them ease and grant them a lofty reward for enduring such kind of hardship in this world as well.
Okay, and Sheikh, my final question to you would be, if the people of Syria are watching this particular program, what message would yourself and the Nigerians like to give to the people of Syria?
The message I want to give to them, in fact, this is a message I give to every Syrian. Subhanallah, anywhere I go to and I meet a Syrian brother, I give him a hug and I tell him, Wallahi, I love you for the sake of Allah. So what I'm sending to them from Nigeria, and this is all across the world, all the Muslims all across the world who are seeing this and who know that they feel they want to do something but they can't, and their hands are tied, or they are one way or the other restricted to just making this sincere dua and plea to Allah on their behalf. I want them to know that we are with them, that we love them for the sake of Allah, and that what they are facing in this world is a test, it is a trial, and bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, they will receive a lofty reward in the sight of Allah, a lofty position, a lofty place in Jannah for their patience and perseverance. The Syrian people are the most beautiful people I have met, subhanallah. They are here in Nigeria. There's a very wonderful Syrian community in Nigeria, and I'm close to quite a number of them, subhanallah. And I know that this trial they are facing, it will come to an end one day. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. After every difficulty, there surely will come ease. And so may Allah bless them, and they should keep their hope, and they should not lose hope and not despair in the mercy of Allah coming to them, inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheikh Abu Bakr, all the way from Nigeria. We appreciate your wise words and for also you taking time out and helping us here on the channel. Thank you very much, Sheikh. Let's get back to our discussion talking about Syria. I wanted to ask a question. When we as Muslims see these images and see what is going on and understand this, we feel pain, we feel sorrow. Now, this pain that we feel, is this part of Iman? Is this one's belief being manifested?
Absolutely. It's injustice that is happening in the face of this earth. And, when we see injustice, this is evil, you should react. And if your heart doesn't react, if you don't have that rage and that anger inside you, that means there is something wrong with your faith, with your Iman. And you really have to go and check where you stand once it comes to believing in Allah subhanahu, because this is another Muslim, this is another, even non-Muslims who are being killed unjustly is also to be addressed by Muslims. It's an injustice to be addressed by Muslims. This is a normal course of action for every Muslim, that you're raised by this. Okay. And it's a sign of faith, absolutely.
Okay, Sheikh, as we've been inviting people to join us on Facebook and to give comments on this subject, I would like to read out some of the comments we have on Facebook, and then you can give me your thoughts and feedback on that as well. If I can start with the very first comment, and they hopefully will be appearing on the screen as well so we can read them together. The very first comment comes from a young man by the name of Wim Detame. And he says, I don't think you should talk about Muslim brothers and sisters. This fight is not about religion. All people in Aleppo should be saved. So keep informing the world about what is going on. Let Syrians in the West, together with their Western friends, go out and ask for action of the government. Or maybe the people should start boycotting Russian products, the weapon industry, and other things like that. What would you respond to?
That's also another way to deal with the situation. You see, that's the beauty of hearing brothers and sisters like, the brother or the sister you quoted their comment. This is a good thing. I think boycotting Russian products is one of the means to, stop this. Speaking out against it, talking against it. Don't shy away. You see, they got us tricked in Syria with the ISIS. And so now you got to be very careful, because when you speak about Syria, you have to distinguish between ISIS, which is a group, or Allah knows best who implanted them there, and they claim that they are doing the Islamic work.
It's a bit convenient, isn't it? We find them in all the right places at the right time.
Yeah, it's a scheme, like I said.
Conspiracy.
It's a it's obvious. It's crystal clear. Who created them and how they. So when you speak about this in the West, you have to be extremely careful. When I live in the United States, and when I talk about Syria and what's happening in Syria, I have to. Because somehow they're going to take you mistaken that you're supporting ISIS. No, I'm not supporting ISIS. I'm supporting the people that actually the U.S. government is supporting. The people who are trying to liberate Syria from the Assad regime.
Sure.
And they are being supported. So we can talk about this. So yes, talk about it if you're in the West, but be careful. Make sure that you place that distinguishment between ISIS and the groups that are being supported by the Western regimes.
Excellent. Sheikh, let me read to you our second comment that we've got on Facebook, and that comes from a brother by the name of Akasuki, if I pronounce that correctly. And he says some of the solutions are to unite for one dua and ask Allah for His mercy and continually making dua. Number two, he said we should send help to those people who are suffering with basic needs like food and medicines. And number three, he makes a list of countries, and he said all these countries must unite against terrorism and help each other to support the people of Syria. So he's asking for the Sunni Muslims to come together, these countries, their leaders to come together and to support the Syrians. So he's given us three solutions there.
Well, he actually named the things that which is beautiful. I think that's the only thing that we have in our, hand. There is nothing more, and this is really the painful piece of this. Is there is nothing more that you can do beside this.
Okay, very nice. Sheikh, the third comment comes from Sister Asma bint Zana, and she says, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease the suffering of these people and bring the victory close. The only contribution I am capable of making is dua, which is the most important weapon for a believer. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease their difficulties and grant them peace and stability soon.
Ameen.
What would you say to that?
Don't ever underestimate the power of dua, dear sister. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. You cannot imagine that one dua can take care of the situation.
Sure.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your dua and our dua for our Muslim brothers and sisters in Islam. I mentioned before that this is qadarullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us the only thing that can prevent the qadar from being basically implemented is the dua. لا يرد القضاء إلا الدعاء. So actually our dua can make things happen for our Muslim brothers and sisters in Syria, inshallah.
Okay, sure. Sheikh, we have just like 5 minutes to go, and I want to read out some more comments as well. We have somebody by the name of Sasko, and he writes, my opinion is to fight back. We cannot just sit down and watch this Zionist killing our brothers and sisters anytime they want. This is my opinion. I feel ashamed when I see my Muslim brothers and sisters suffering like that. We are disappointed, and our heroes are disappeared like those of Khalid bin Walid.
You see, how are you going to do it? You know, it's just how you're going to go about it. You know, you got to be very careful, because Syria right now is a fertile land, for everything to go either or, either way. So you got to be really extreme. That type of language is beautiful. But be careful, dear brother, dear, whoever is writing this comment, where you are and to whom are you addressing this, and it's
be politically correct.
Be politically correct.
Okay.
Okay, this is a piece of advice to the brother and sister in Islam. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Sure.
Sheikh,
the next comment comes from sister. Her name is Sabahat, and she says that all the Muslim countries should speak out against the Zionist plot of the Middle East, and they should come together, unite, and speak against the common enemy, which is the Zionist.
I think Muslims just need to go back to their deen.
Okay.
Need to go back to Islam.
Sure.
Inshallah.
Okay.
I think this is the solution. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. You know, a lot of the people who speak out may not even be praying 5 times a day.
Sure.
I think we need to start from there, inshallah, and hopefully enhance that. And you see, that language is beautiful. When you have fulfilled the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your lives, when you're striving to do your best. I think the focus here is how can we take Muslims back to their deen, to the religion of Islam. And with this, inshallah, Allah will make a change in our lives.
Okay, excellent, Sheikh. We are at the end of the program, and is there anything you would like to add or say to console the hearts of those that are in pain, like the wider community, just in 10 seconds?
The believer is always optimistic.
Okay.
Always, always optimistic, because he believes that Allah is in control.
Sure.
And Allah will change things around in a second if He wills. But again, we need to go back to Allah.
Sure.
To qualify for Allah to change our condition. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never change the condition of an individual unless they change from within. And this is what we need to work on, inshallah.
Okay.
And stay optimistic.
All right, thank you very much, Sheikh, for coming to the program and giving us your contributions and taking time out of your busy schedule as well. So thank you very much.
Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Junaid.
And I would like to conclude by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Dear viewers, we've come to the end of our program here on Huda tonight. Joining us live on this fantastic segment, the series that we are trying our very best to raise the awareness of the suffering of the people of Syria. And as we have just heard over the last few days, the Syrian, or I should say this militia, has bombed hospitals, killing innocent people, casualties of war. From amongst those, 92 of those are children. Residents from Aleppo are coming out and making statements that really, if you read into them, they will make your eyes tear, they'll make your heart beat faster. It's a very sad story, it's very catastrophic, and we need to take action. There are so many things that we can get involved in. Like the Sheikh mentioned, first and foremost is that of dua. Also boycotting, also raising awareness using social media. Now there are so many other things that we could do as well, and I'm not the most qualified person to tell you, but I'm sure you know. And I'm sure that you can join us on Facebook and other outlets and tell us what we can do as well to help the people of Syria. And I'd like to conclude by reminding you that the Prophet ﷺ, he made mention that the life of one human soul is worth more to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the Kaaba itself. So how much are you willing to go and spend and take time out to go visit the house of Allah, and which you should do? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ are telling you that the life of one human being is more valuable than the Kaaba itself. So brothers and sisters, it's time to take action, and it's time to stop being so passive about what is taking place around the world. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in, especially those that contributed via phone and via Facebook, and hopefully tomorrow we will see you on our program as well on Huda tonight with the same topic, with the same theme, but with different guests inshallah ta'ala. So until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.